Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Silent Hill podcast. All right, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here for this series. Again, following in this case the Silent Hill 4 The Room Monsters. The last one I did was back in February, so it's been a couple of months. So I thought I would mix this one in while I'm wrapping up the Mysteries and Oddities series. I'm also thinking about doing other new game series, one involving the Resistance games because they have some really great monsters to talk about in there, and then also the Suffering games because of the crazy, really creepy monsters that they have in those. So I'll just think about that and see if I'll do it later on. This one, though, this monster that's encountered next in Silent Hill 4 The Room has to do with a creature that comes in two varieties, and it also has many unique characteristics, probably the most human-like, if you will, within the game itself, outside of the ghost, I guess. And it's an interesting creature to talk about, and it's also one of the few rare creatures that actually delves into another game, so it has the honor of following itself, in this case, to another Silent Hill game. And it has to do with this. You're looking at it now. Very distinct looking creature. Very interesting monster. It's called the Gumhead. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about all the information tied to this unique creature. So what is this Gumhead? Well, it also has a different name. It's also known as Rubberface. That's another variation of it. It's a creature that's encountered as you go back into, in this case, the other world, or whatever that world is called within Silent Hill, with where all the monsters are. But once you go in there, it makes a very memorable entrance. For example, it's called the Building World when you first awaken, and when you do so, there's an alley that you start coming across. In this case, as the main character, Henry. And as you go across the hall towards that alley, towards the end of it, you would have to do this purposely, though. Tilt upwards, and then you can see these weird things jumping across the rooftops between the two buildings. Luckily, the player I was watching on YouTube play the game, he happened to do so just very briefly, and sure enough, I saw these creatures, these Gumheads, jump across the buildings themselves, and it made for a very memorable entrance because they also have a unique screech of some kind, something that that just seems familiar, like a chimpanzee type scream, but again, in the world of Silent Hill, it's just distorted enough to make your hair stand on end. But yes, at least that's with regards to its entrance. Let's talk about the characteristics of how it looks like. There's two variations of it, like I was mentioning. So the first one is known as the old type Gumhead, and you're looking at it now. Essentially, it's a larger man-sized creature, slightly larger than, let's say, Henry himself. It has what could be considered like a monkey-like body, almost like a shaved gorilla type body. Thick, big muscles, broad chest, thick legs as well. But it has its entire body pretty much skinless, like almost like it's a rotting form of grayish skin, very sickening looking, almost like it has a decaying factor, or if it has some kind of cancer, just something that is basically just eating it away. And then most distinctly, it seems to have this growth coming out from underneath its chin. It could actually be another face that is appearing outwards, or it could be a tumor, again reminiscent of some kind of cancer that this thing has, which I'll talk about more about that, about the symbolism later on. But either way, it still adds to the sickening feature of it. Its face, though, is distinct in the fact that it seems like it's melting away. You can kind of make out a resemblance, something related to eye sockets, a nose, a mouth, but that stuff again seems to be melting off of its face. You would have to look very closely in order to see that it has that face. But yes, that is at least that feature, the older one. The other one is called the new type Gumhead, which you're looking at now. This one appears later on in the game, similar sized as the old one. The big difference, though, is the fact that it has a different coloration. In this case, while the old Gumhead is completely gray almost, this one is also grayish, but it has all these blotches of red on it, almost as if it has like cuts that had blood seeping out of it, and then the blood just dried out within the outside of its body. And then it also has that same tumor or second head head growing underneath its mouth. But this one is much more, I guess, blood covered. So it's bloody red, in other words. So it makes it much more distinct. And then also with its head, in this case, while the old type gum head I was mentioning earlier looks like it was melting off its face, it's hard to discern the features. This one, the features are much more distinct. You can actually see a head on it. You can see the eyes, you can see the mouth, you can see the nose, maybe even some semblance of, in this case, hair on it as well. But what's interesting to note too is that the new type gumhead may actually be wearing pants. It's hard to discern if that's simply just the coloration of its legs or if it truly has, in this case, outward clothing on its legs. But either way, it makes it look like it has some kind of pants. Both of these, of course, are strongly masculine. Thus far, there is no female gumhead that is encountered, although there is another monster that I'll highlight later on in a separate video that may be its own version of a female gumhead, but in this case, these are truly just masculine. And then as far as how these things attack, very ape-like, so it definitely seems to mimic the world of primates. Besides looking like apes and besides sounding like apes, it attacks that way too. It moves and scatters either on all legs, 4 legs, or it becomes bipedal. When it does so and it becomes bipedal, then it uses its strong arms to attack or leap forward, and then when it's on its legs, or all 4 of its legs, then it just simply uses it to run in a chimp-like manner as well. It can bite too, much like primates would with its mouth. In this case, it does so as well. Pretty easy to fend off though. The player I was watching, all they did was just essentially use a melee weapon and just swat at, in this case, the gumheads, and they were taken out pretty easily. What's interesting to note too is that the way the gumheads attack, you do have an option to make the attack first yourself, because these gumheads, interestingly enough, they'll land somewhere near Henry, but then they'll start inspecting him. I saw this several times within the game. They'll look at him, almost tilt their head as if wondering like what they should do, and then the player just quickly just started attacking, and then that was it. Like they started attacking back, but the player still had an advantage. I like that little mannerism too, because it made it seem like that these creatures actually had a living thought within their head. Like they're wondering, should I attack? Should I not? What's going on? Should I leave this thing alone? But it does make for an interesting discussion. And then the only thing really is you can use, I guess, firearms if you wanted to, but considering how easy it is to defeat these creatures, that's pretty much, you're just wasting ammo at that point. But they do attack in pairs, they do attack in groups too, so they do have that social aspect associated with them. So that's the only hindrance you might have when you're facing these creatures, is group in numbers. So as long as you can continue to attack one by one separately, and then that way you'll lower the number within the pack, then that'll make it much easier to get around these creatures. And then as far as their symbolism, what they're supposed to represent, there's various meanings tied to them. For starters, because they're so masculine, there's the idea that they are Walter Sullivan's version of how he viewed men within the world, especially adult men. So he had pretty bad experiences as a child, again with him being deserted, abandoned, growing up in the orphanage. All these adult men that he ran into who would pick on him, who would bully him, who would do other things to him as well. Apparently this is how he views them now within the other world. I would even think that these may actually be the men themselves, the people that abused him, now converted into these monsters, almost like it's like their eternal damnation to forever live within Walter's world as these primates. Speaking of which, he also, the reason why they're considered ape-like is because they may be a representation of how Walter views people, how they're subordinates, how they are subclass, how they are essentially lower than humans, all these people that treated him badly. And so that's why he gave them all these primate-like characteristics, in this case being semi-intelligent, attacking without reason, just essentially making them just lower than what they truly are, as a way to punish them as well. Another interesting thing too is if you apparently get close enough to 2, the gumheads, they can steal your weapons. They can steal your pipe, whatever other melee weapon you have, and then use it against you. This is also supposed to represent how Walter views adult men, because of growing up in his impoverished, I guess, mindset and impoverished lifestyle. He had probably many others that were greedy, that were stealing things from him, and how they had this self-indulgence, and so that's how he visualizes them. Same thing with regards to their faces, them being melted. The idea is they all look the same to him. Even the new gumheads that have the pants on them to try to make them some, give them some individuality. In Walter's case, the face is still all the same. They're all still the same people. That's why he doesn't view them as anything else but one mass group of unidentifiable people. And so that way, when it came to his sacrifices, it makes it much easier for him to do so rather than seeing them as individuals. I still think, though, that they are more along the lines of the people that were punishing him, that were treating him bad. Now he's having their revenge on them by turning them into these gumheads. So I'm thinking that every time you as a player play Henry, and in this case you're killing these gumheads, you're actually killing the very people that might have treated Walter very, very badly as he was growing up. So who knows? It reminds me of that line from Silent Hill 3 where Vincent prominently states, where he's asking Heather, like, monsters, they look like monsters to you, making the idea that they were actually humans, but it's just how the player sees them as monsters rather than the people that they truly are. So that's at least my opinion, and I think that's something that would be interesting to know. Now, as far as the gumhead being featured in other games, yes, it's one of the few ones. You're looking at it now. There it is. It was featured prominently within Silent Hill, the arcade game. That's that shoot 'em up type game that was, I'm still hoping to play it somewhere. It is there in Las Vegas apparently, but it's in a faraway casino that I'll probably never get a chance to go to. But there it is. It's a little bit changed, though, from the Silent Hill 4 game, where in this case it's been much more simplified. I don't even see the tumor on it, and it looks much more man-shaped than gorilla monkey-shaped than from before. So I don't know why it was slightly tweaked that way within Silent Hill, the arcade game, but the similarities, though, is that they still have that grayish skin on them, that rotting skin, and in this case they do have some pop marks, some blood streaks, I guess you could call it, within them, but that's about it. Everything else seems to have been changed within this creature, so why include it within the Silent Hill arcade game if you're going to change it that much, especially the most distinct feature, the ape-like look to it, and then that giant tumor or second head growing from its body. Who knows where that was done, but at least it does have the distinction of being within a second game, one of the few monsters to do so. But that's it. That's pretty much all the info tied to the Gumhead. Pretty easy monster to kill. Some interesting symbolisms associated with it. But if anyone has any more info, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. That'd be really great to hear. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.